Alright, so now that we know how to hand piece, so we did this part together. I went ahead and sewed this seam here. So after you get your row done, so you do row, 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 you have to iron it. You have to get this flat, right? Because it's kind of bumpy, wrinkly. So this is how I iron. So what I do is I flip it over. And you want to make sure this is very open. So kind of like pull it, tug it a little bit, doesn't matter. And then you're going to open it up. There we go. And you can just like use your finger to like open it real good. And then you'll do the same thing on the other side. You'll kind of just pull it a little bit. You just want it to lay really flat. What you're not doing is stretching it, okay? You're just putting some tension on it, right? You don't want to stretch it out of place, but you do want it to be flat. So then you take your iron, you iron it real good. Then what I like to do is I like to flip it over. Make sure your seams are laying down flat. Like I said before, I like to open my seams. I find if you just like push them to one side, it can get a little bulky. So I like opening them flat. I think it lays better. So then what I do is I just try to like make sure there's some tension so that the seam lays completely flat. You want it completely open. You don't want there to be any weird like where it got puckered over or anything like that. You want it to be completely flat, like against the stitching. So, oh, I had to sneeze. There it is. So then what you do is you lay your rows together. It's really important, I can't stress this enough, when you are working with like a small block or a bigger block, you want to have it all laid out right side up so you can see where you are and you don't lose your place. So, like I said before, I've already sewn this. So what I do is I lay it out all face up. I know where I'm working, right? I'm working this seam. So what I do is I take this and I flip it over, right? So now I know exactly where I'm sewing. Catching a cold. So it's basically no different than sewing two squares together. I start with the sides and then I make sure my points match. So we'll do that. Stick it through. Find the corner. Make sure all this is laying nice and flat. Right? There's no wrinkling or anything. Sorry if my hands are getting in the way. And then we'll do the other one. Open it up. So everything's nice and flat. And then so on these sides, I just kind of like pick one of the seam allowances. You kind of like, you can see where your seam allowances like are meeting. You just want to make sure that's like nice and lined up because we want to have really nice points. Just make sure. See, you can't really, the line doesn't go over the seam allowance, but you can kind of tell where it is. Go. And same thing on that other side. You want to make sure your two lines are meeting. There we go. And then I'm going to go ahead and throw a couple of pins in between. Just make sure everything's laying flat, right? That's it. Make sure it goes to the other line. Okay. So there. We're nice and pinned. And so basically you'll just follow the same process. So as the quilt gets bigger and bigger, line up your edges, line up where all your points are, and then just pin as you need in between that. In quilting, it's really important that you try to get your points to match. So what that means is like this. See how perfect those are? That's because I did it by hand. I'll show you the difference. This was very hastily done, so I'm going to show you something in a sec. But these points, yeah, that doesn't match. I just kind of like sped through this. Those match, which is good. But like those don't. But by hand piecing, you can really make sure that everything matches perfectly. So where's my needle? So this is actually, I'm going to show you the difference between the silamide and the thread on the last video. I'm going to talk to you through this. We're not going to do this slow. So the stitch that I showed you, so kind of like accordion this, right? I'm not pulling anything out of position. Trying to start back here. So I just really want you to just know that through our mistakes, that's like how we learn. Like if you're not making mistakes, you're probably not learning. And it's okay not to be perfect the first time. I've been sewing for a very long time, and so hand sewing is something that comes very naturally to me. And also don't worry too much about getting exactly on the line. Just do your best. I mean, we're talking, if you do not make a pin line, like if you're on one side of the pin line, should have been the other. I mean, that's like 1/20th of an inch. I mean, this is not something that's going to throw your quilt completely off. And sewing, so much of like, especially hand sewing, it's a technique and it is a feel, and you will find what feels good to you. How I do it might not work for you. But this is kind of where I've landed and where I'm comfortable. Also too, one of the things you really need to be careful of in sewing, because it is like a handicraft, is your wrist. You don't want to like try to keep your wrist like pretty straight, right? Because that's how you can get carpal tunnel. So try to think about some ergonomics there. Not hunching over. So I'm at the seam allowance here. Like I said, I sew through my seam allowance. Some people say you're not supposed to. But this is just kind of like an eyeball situation because like there aren't lines. Then what I do is in the gap, where's the camera? I'll throw a back stitch right here. So I actually, in some of my other quilts, I've actually had the points come apart on me. So I've just started throwing a back stitch in there. And also too, don't be afraid. Like if you're not getting the running stitch, don't be afraid to like stab and poke it. So what I mean by that is like literally you go through all the way and you come back all the way, you know, until you feel comfortable with the rocking motion. So this is pretty much it. This is hand sewing, hand piecing a quilt. And you'll just keep doing this like over and over again. So one thing I am going to talk about in a minute is kind of how we can use this 9 patch to make some cool stuff. So, like I said, the 9 patch, which is what we're making, is like super basic, but you can really do some like really cool stuff with it. So I'm taking my back stitch, right? Yeah, I'm gonna show you some like really cool stuff. We're gonna iron this here in a sec. Sorry, it's taking me a minute. Alright, we're almost done. Okay. Through. And put my back stitch right here. Sorry if all you saw was my hand. I was not paying attention. Right there. Boom. Cut your thread. See how much better the Silamite is? It didn't tangle at all. It's the best. Right, so I'm gonna iron this. So it's kind of like the same thing. You want to kind of like, you don't stretch it. You just want to like put some tension on it just to get it to lay flat. There we go. It looks like I'm going to pull my thread a little tight right here. But that's cool because the iron, they always say that you sew with the ironing board. It's like the old wives' tale. You can use the steam from the iron to like manipulate fabrics, which is like so cool. So I'm gonna put a little bit of tension back here, just to make sure it's laid. So I've got a little puckery right there. So let's see what's going on here. Let's kind of lay this down. I'm gonna try to work that little spot in. You see that? I'm gonna try to work it in. So steam is how you can manipulate fabrics and threads and things. Just like really steam the crap out of it. I mean, it doesn't look great, but no one will ever see it. Like I said, it's a practice in not being perfect. Like, I'm not about to take out this whole seam just for that spot right there. Like, that's crazy town. I'm not doing that. So this is our 9 patch. Once you sew all 3 rows together, you've quilted something. You put something together. You did a quilt block. That's awesome. That's so cool. So what you can do, so let's just say like you were gonna use these 2 fabrics and you were gonna make like a throw pillow cover or something. So what you would do next is you would make a block that was opposite colors. So you would do a block like this, right? And you see how it's like every other one, blah, blah, blah. And then what you could do, so you make this block, make this block, then you make this block and this block. And then you sew those together. So how I would do it, I would probably sew the top two, the bottom two, and then do the middle. And so, it, like, seriously, quilting's that easy. Like, if you just kept doing this, so you're gonna have to make two different types. So you would have the blue on the outside and then the red on the outside. And then you just alternate them. And that's how you get this. But, like, you could do something as simple as, like, these squares. And, you could do something like where, like, oh, in this block, this right here, maybe this is like a yellow, and then, or, you know what I'm saying? Or you could do this square like this, and then this one over here is going, like, I don't know, you can, like, you could do these two the same, and then these two have different colors. So then you're making a quilt that has stripes down it. The options here are, like, endless. There's so much you could do with a 9 patch. One of my favorite things you can do with a 9 patch is, so you have your 9 patch, and then right here, instead of a patch, you put a solid color. So one of the same of these. So, like, if this was it's called an Irish chain quilt. So, like, what you would do is you would have this, and then this block would, let's say, be just the blue. And then it would consistently always be the blue. And so, or you could do white anyway. But the secondary block has to be one of these fabrics. And I drew it out real quick to show you. This is what it turns out to look like. Isn't that crazy? Like, and all you did was just alternate these. So I drew this part too to show you what I'm talking about. You see how this is, like, broken down? So it's like 9 patch solid, 9 patch solid, 9 patch, etc., etc. But if one of the colors in your 9 patch is the same as your solid, you get this. And it's called an Irish chain, and it's super cool. And all it is a 9 patch and the same size square. So since this is a 6x6 square, your solid piece, you would just have to cut out a 6x6 square. Well, 6.5 by 6.5, because you need 1/2 inch seam allowance. And that's it. And you can make this insane quilt. And it looks so hard. That looks so complicated. But it's not. So it goes kind of back to what I was saying, like, earlier. It's like, quilting looks so much harder than it is. Like, all you need to do is, you gotta get comfortable with the running stitch. That is your only barrier, because you're super creative and you have a really good eye for color. And I think that you could come up with some really cool stuff. You just have to get, it's a hand thing. You got to do it 1,000 times before it gets to be second nature. So yeah, with putting together your block, just always have it face out. And then as you're moving through the block, turn your piece over, sew that seam. You know what I'm saying? You got to keep it organized, because it is very easy to get lost when you have, let's say you've cut out like this. This is a quilt I was supposed to make Henry for tomorrow, for Christmas Eve. Or a stocking, I'm sorry, that was made out of a quilt block. and I haven't done it. And it's like 11:30 the day before Christmas Eve. But if you have a bunch of these just like sitting around, like you don't like, what is this? You don't know how to do this. So you gotta make your blog with your pieces and then sew them and put them back and sew them and put them back. Otherwise it is going to be a nightmare. So yeah, that's how you make a quilt. It is that easy. I'm so excited to see you guys in a couple of weeks, and I'm excited to go to Joanne's. I know in your kit there was a couple of things I wish she had put in there, which hopefully we can pick up for you. So anyway, Merry Christmas, and I hope you enjoy this gift that me and Daddy got for you.